Good evening and welcome to Green Kill Sessions presents Calling All Poets, second Thursday of each month. We've been doing this for about 6 or 8 months now. My short-term memory is getting less and less, so I can't remember the months. This is the beautiful Green Kill Gallery right here at 229 Green Kill Avenue in Kingston, the place where writers and painters and filmmakers and songwriters and musicians of all kinds come to express themselves and make the world beautiful in one way, shape, form, or another. What we do here at Green Kill Presents Calling All Poets is we have 3 featured readers. They will each read between 20 and 22 minutes apiece. I will be hosting. My name is Mike Jurkovic. I'll tell you a little bit more about CAPS in a few minutes, but I'd like to bring up our first featured reader first, and his name is Tom Romeo, and he has been writing and performing his poetry and stories for nearly 30 years, and so far, no one, and I do mean no one, has tried to stop him. He takes that as a pretty good sign. Originally from Long Island, he moved to Kingston in 2014 and has performed at several venues in the Hudson Valley. His work can be found in 3 chapbooks, Remember, Demented Love, and Oh My God, or OMG, and video performances can be found at It's a Long YouTube thing. I'll let him tell you if he wants to tell you that. My friend Tom Romeo. Come on up, Tom.
Hi, thank you very much. The long URL is now just whereforearts.com, and you can get to the videos there. It's been a while since I've been here. After first meeting my wife, Robin, who is in the audience, she told her sister, Shelley, that I was a storyteller, to which Shelley replied, "Oh, honey, they all are." This is called Memorial Day. Once, when I was 10 and you were off fighting in the corporate wars that took you from me the way the war in Europe and Asia took you from your parents, I went looking for you in bedroom closets and dresser drawers that smelled of aqua velvet and Bengay. I found a leather-covered box in your nightstand buried carelessly beneath cancel checks and handkerchiefs. A miniature chest I hope held hidden treasure, or at least a map that would lead to you. So carefully I opened that box. Inside, laying ceremoniously on maroon velvet, was treasure. Ribbon, medal, and memories. Proud symbols of honor and bravery. My father? I didn't notice you in the doorway, hat and briefcase in hand, or hear your footsteps as you walked slowly over to where I knelt in awe. You took the box from my small hands, closed it, then just for a moment, cradled it in yours, rubbing the leather top with your thumbs. You smiled an odd smile and said, "Every day since 45, I've been living on borrowed time." Then put the box back in the drawer. You once told me a story about a visit to your father. You were an officer, a decorated pilot home from the war, returning to the house in Bensonhurst in a shiny black limousine. He barely shook your hand. He said nothing about your achievements, no words of pride or affection. He left you alone to stare out the window at the empty limo. "I know he loved me," you said. "I know he loved me." I loved flying, you told me, and still dream of being at the controls. When I said I too would like to learn to fly, you took time I never knew you had to teach me about airspeed, altitude, and attitude. We studied charts with well-worn tools. You helped me learn how to navigate a safe course away from home. Every day, on borrowed time. Your mother thought it was too dangerous, so I gave it up. For years, I felt sad for you, a pilot grounded by job and family, wife and children, me. But today, with your family surrounding you at the dinner table, a different son asks about sadness and regret. And again, that smile. None. Not one, you say. Ever since 45, I've been living on borrowed time. Our visit over, we share a full-bodied Technicolor hug made awkward by the dance we do to keep your hearing aid from squealing. Over your shoulder, I see you in 8x10 black and white, younger than I am now, wearing dress uniform and flyboy smile. I know you love me. I know you love me, and still dream of flying. Thanks. Why I love R&B. Noogie and Snakehead played basement R&B in the winter of '65 while I sat on the couch, still small enough to be, "He's so cute" to the girls. Surrounded by beehives, ponytails, and the sweet smell of Prel and ivory soap, I was 99 and 44 100% pure, but old enough to feel the energy of moist teenage heat and my own near-adolescent temperature rise. I watched the change in time, all stovepipe chinoed and pointy-booted, play midnight hour, bearing two cool poses, betrayed by awkward timing and faux soul phrasing. Artistry was not their intent. They wielded their guitars like pool cues, banking desire off the knotty pine and linoleum, trying to find magic in 3 chords that would help them sink the 9-ball into pockets other than their own. Sweat poured down Noogie's strained face as he nearly swallowed the mic, singing, "That's when my love comes a-tumbling down." The cheap PA distorted the words into rhythmic grunts. Snakehead played a clumsy lick, squeezing out what passion he could, while all around me the girls giggled and swayed, shooting back hot sighs and knowing looks through pouty red lips and half-closed aquamarine eyelids. Suddenly, I was grabbed by the hand, led to the only free square foot left in that small basement room, and spun round and round, caught in some ancient ritual that left me reeling in dizzying ecstasy and unself-conscious delight. Is it any wonder why I love rhythm and blues? Thanks. Spalding. I heard the satisfying thwack when the Spalding hit the broom handle. It flew a long, high arc toward the Quas's roof. If it bounced and landed in the street, it was an automatic double. With the bases loaded, that meant 2 runs in the game. If it landed in the gutter, we wouldn't see it again until late fall when Mr. Quas would toss it to the ground with all the others, faded, rotted, as useless as the clumps of wet leaves. Please bounce, please bounce, please bounce. If it didn't bounce, it was an out, and we lose. End of game, no do-overs, touch black, now you can't take it back. It meant 75 cents and a mile bike ride to the candy store, 3/4 of a mile if you cut through the path between the 2 houses that backed up to ours, then took Surrey to Aberdeen, Aberdeen to Kent, and then Kent to Hillside. Joe screamed, "I told you we should have got a Penzy Pinky!" Nobody paid any attention to him. All eyes followed that ball's trajectory. But I knew that he was right. The Pinky only cost 35 cents, which left some money over to get pixie sticks, nickel nips, or a pair of wax lips. If it landed in the gutter, no great loss. Economically, it was the smart move. But the pathetic plunk it made, even when you hit the sweet spot, just wouldn't cut it. Sure, it was okay for monkey in the middle or hit the stick or even curveball in a pinch, but it was not good enough for the last game of this season. The Pinky's slick, smooth surface just couldn't compare to the rough, substantial feel of a Spalding in your hand. A Spalding sailed when you threw it, flew when you hit it, stuck when you caught it. It was worth a week's allowance. So over Joe's objections, that's what we bought. That summer had been long and glorious. Carefree weeks of playing Ring Alivio, hide and seek, flashlight tag, long after the night was lit only by a couple of street lamps and the blinking tail ends of what seemed like 1,000 lightning bugs. In June, our 8 years together at elementary school ended. 9 for me, Joe, and Kenny, if you counted kindergarten. On Monday, we'd start high school. Start our not-yet lives that had been waiting patiently for summer to end, for childhood to end. And so on this hot Saturday afternoon of 12 innings, the last 3 of them ties, we put our hopes on a rubber ball flying through a suburban sky toward an unknown fate. We put all our hopes on where and how that Spalding would land. Please bounce, please bounce, please bounce. Thank you. The 16th of June is Robin's birthday. Offline. You gave me a book when we met, one you recommended in an email, one you enjoyed and said was being released as a movie in a weekend. Maybe we could see it when it came out. I took that as a good sign. You bought it for me the same day of the required meet and greet between online connection and official date. You bought it at the bookstore where we met in the cafe, where we met IRL, in real life. Do they still say IRL now that people's life online is more real to them than any lie they live off? A question for another time. I never told you this before, but I saw you buying the book. I didn't know it was you at the time. I just saw a woman from the back pick up a book, Derailed, by James Siegel, the one you told me about, and I wondered if it was you. Quite the coincidence if it wasn't. Then I worried if maybe it wasn't such a good sign, derailed, before we even got started. As it turns out, I had nothing to worry about. You say when you first saw me, I was wearing a cape. I wasn't, though after more than a decade, you still don't believe me. You say you were captivated by the man in that cape, so I let it go. For me, it was squirrel milk and yeah. Squirrel milk and yeah. After introducing ourselves and settling into an awkward seating arrangement, the last 2 seats in the cafe, you in a tall stool and me in a low chair, though it never felt as if you were looking down on me, I asked you what you wanted in your coffee. You said milk. I said I checked and all they had was squirrel milk. I don't know why I said it, but I did. And without missing a beat, you said, I wonder how they get the milk from the squirrel. We bantered back and forth about the logistics of milking squirrels. We talked about it for a while, probably longer than anyone should, until you declared that squirrel milk just wouldn't cut it. I asked if black was okay, and you smiled and said, yeah, just like that. You looked me right in the eyes and let out a breathy, yeah. And suddenly, I couldn't catch my breath. So I caught yours, and that was it. I have no idea what we talked about over tea and black coffee. Obviously, this was years before you gave me the ultimatum of drinking coffee or getting a dog. Story for another time. But when we were through, having met and greeted and fallen in love, I asked, may I call you? And you answered, I will be waiting with great anticipation. And you did, and I did, and here we are, still looking for that cape in the closet, still trying to figure out how to milk a squirrel. Still in love? Yeah. Thank you. Great. The widow visits. When the widow makes her weekly visit to the community center, she carries a canvas bag filled with yarn and needles, commiserates with other women who sit in a circle of gray hair and regret. Today is the first anniversary of her husband's passing, an anniversary on which she finds herself surprisingly ambivalent. Today, she monopolizes the conversation, and they let her, knowing that one day it will be their turn, or will be again. She first took up knitting to keep her hands busy. When she was young, her mother beat it into her that idle hands are the devil's workshop. She took it to heart and lived accordingly, even after she married, busying herself with gardening and housework as a young wife, cooking, cleaning, and mending her children's clothes as a young mother, washing piss and shit from sheets and her dying husband's body near the end when he barely recognized her, when he couldn't say thank you for her efforts. Not that he ever said thank you, for anything she did, for the children, for the family, for him. Never a thought for herself. If she had taken up needlepoint instead of knitting, there would be pillows scattered around the house with those exact words stitched in bright red. Never a thought for herself. And though she kept her hands busy, the devil came anyway, stole her husband and children and happiness, and left her alone. Now she sits and knits hats for the homeless, striped hats made from abandoned scraps of yarn donated to her cause, polyester browns, oranges, greens, reds, pinks, and blues. This is my 100th hat of the year, she says, referring to the work in her hands. 100 hats, and I still haven't made a dent in the pile of yarn stored in the spare bedroom. Whatever they give me, no matter how ugly, I do my best to turn it into something useful. It would be great if I could pick out my own yarn, the ones I wanted to use, but that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. You do the best with what you get. No use whining about it. What good does that do? I can't stand whining. It's why I don't like books about suffering. Suffer in silence, I say. Get a life or make one. My boy, never a peep, no matter what he's going through. The girl, yada, 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 always something wrong, always something to complain about. How does this look so far, she asks, holding up the rows she's finished. Another row of red, maybe? No, blue. I do miss him. Even though I didn't like him very much, I do miss him. The thought of him, anyway. Not really the person he was, but the role he played. Husband, father. Frankly, I was surprised at the hole he left. Did you know he stole my boy during the teen years? Thick as thieves, no room for me. Did you know he gave the girl flowers every day? Every day. No flowers for me. We'd hardly touched in years. But I suppose I loved him, like that song from Fiddler. I lived with him, fought with him, starved with him, slept with him. Well, he's gone now. He's gone, and I'm still here. Sometimes I think he's the lucky one. But, like I said, you do the best with what you get, right? And done. 100 done. She inspects her work. Ugly, I know, but it'll keep somebody's head warm. That's all that matters, isn't it? You do the best with what you get. I had a wonderful timer here that disappeared off the phone. How much time I got left here? Oh, okay. Scene from an all-night diner. Through twin glass doors, past the counter with vinyl seats that spin on pedestals of chrome, past the mirrored case of slowly rotating cakes. They sit at the same booth at which they've sat across from each other for years, eating the same dinner, the one they always pick from the stained menu with pictures of meals that never seem to match what's brought from the kitchen. 2 meatloaf specials, 2 iced teas for dinner, 1 rice pudding, 1 chocolate, dessert to go, to enjoy later. A familiar tableau, a lover's ritual repeated devoutly since the day they met so long ago, when they'd moan yes, yes, and then yes to knowing looks across a sweat-stained mattress. Now, after years of blissful marriage, after children come and gone, after heart attack and stroke, tonight it's no, 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 he yells no, to a blank stare across the table. She picks at the meal on the plate with her fingers, then brings a handful of mashed potatoes to her mouth. He knocks it from her hand, wipes it clean, and gives her a fork. Use a fork, he says. A fork. And then he remembers, changes mood, softens. He takes her hand. Remember, he asks. He reaches his fork across the table, offers a tiny morsel from his plate. Remember? He sighs, I love you. I love you. He says, I love you, to a blank stare. It goes on like this all through dinner, a frustrating present colliding with a yearned-for past over and over. They eat. They finish. She stares at the table. They wait for dessert. He watches her. carefully at first. He gets impatient. Then, just for a second, he turns to look for the waitress, just for a second or two. A second or two couldn't hurt. He notices a young couple at a booth next to a window. They're holding hands. They're holding a conversation. The woman feeds her partner, who reacts with exaggerated ecstasy. They both laugh, all without breaking their gaze. When he turns back, she's gone. He panics. For a moment, he's lost her. It was just a second or two, wasn't it? Where did she go? The people in the next booth point. He follows the direction of their fingers to the carousel of cakes, where she stares transfixed by the motion of baked goods. He sighs. He laughs. He shrugs. I guess it's time to go, he says. He reaches in his pocket and removes exact change, which he drops between the plates. Don't move, he yells, as he negotiates his way past booths and tables to join her. Stay put. Their waitress rushes to them, carrying dessert in 2 small brown bags. He takes them, shows them to her, and says, for later, he says, to enjoy later. Desks. When you became too old for the ornate princess pink desk, my time's up. All right, shut up. Sorry about that. I'll switch to a short one, or just stop. Read another one? Okay. Oh, that's a really long one. I'm going to read this one because it's happier than it ends. 1 28-ounce can of Tuderosa crushed tomatoes, 1 6-ounce can of Contadina tomato paste, 2 boxes of Ronzoni No. 8 spaghetti, 1 8-ounce container of Locatelli grated pecorino romano cheese, 5 packages of Hungry Man Salisbury steak frozen dinners, 1 quart of Gruyer's chocolate ice cream, 1 head of iceberg lettuce, 5 packets of Good Seasons Italian dressing mix, 1 medium-sized bottle of Berlioz olive oil, 1 medium-sized bottle of vinegar, the brand doesn't matter, 1 6-pack of store-brand paper towels, 1 8-pack of Charmin toilet paper, the one with the red bears, 1 12-pack box of Carnation Instead breakfast. That's what the aide called it, Instead breakfast, instead of instant breakfast. Their weekday companion, maid, cook, watcher with the missing front teeth, who called herself Mom's other daughter, called it Instead breakfast, which made sense, I guess, and made me laugh. On Sundays, I'd do the shopping. Then wash the bathroom, toilet, and sink with Clorox wipes. I'd wash both the bathroom and kitchen with lemon-scented Clorox wipes. I'd wash the floors on my hands and knees and vacuum the hall and bathroom and living room while he watched World War II movies and golf on the TV with the volume at max because he would sometimes forget to put in his hearing aids. She'd watch him watch World War II movies and golf, and she didn't seem to care about the volume or cared more about him than the volume. She'd just stare and smile. The stroke made it difficult to find words, so she remained silent much of the time. But he didn't seem to care about her silence or cared more about her than the silence, about things she couldn't say that he most likely couldn't hear. He just smiled back and reached his hand across the end table, ironically placed in the middle between their 2 recliners. He'd reach across, and even if she didn't notice, and even if they couldn't reach each other across the once end but now middle table, even if blocked by the lamp or a glass of water or plastic boxes that held their pills in day-imprinted compartments, sun, mun, tu, wed, thur, fry, sat, they'd hold hands. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Tom Romeo. Thank you, Tom. Before I bring up our next poet, I want to tell you a little about Calling All Poets, although I'm sure the folks out there know what we've been talking about. Calling All Poets is the Hudson Valley's longest running performance poetry series, now in its 22nd year. Started in Beacon in 1999, and here we are. We do 3 events a month. This is our 2nd event for June. Every second Thursday, we're here at Greenkill with live features. Our first Friday reading is a Zoom event, and our third Thursday, coming up on June 17th, is also a Zoom event. You can register at www.cornwallpoets.net. We got membership, websites. It's too much to go into right now. So let me introduce our next reader, but first, one of the nice things about Cornwall Poets is that everyone is just so different from the other person. I mean, it's like the voices are just so incredibly different, and we get to meet new people as we go along, new poets as we go along, especially in the Zoom era. We've gone international with people coming in from all over the world. But we're here in the Hudson Valley, and I'd like to introduce a new poet to CAPS. Penelope Hyde Levine has lived in the Hudson Valley for over 40 years. She edited News of Music out of Bard College and has been a member of several local writing groups. She has read her work in a variety of venues throughout the Valley. She curated 3 performances in the Cocoon Theater's Soiree in the Parlor, helping fellow poets develop multimedia, visual, and musical performances of their work, as well as setting her own poems to music, dance, theater, and film. She curated a show of Rita Sherry's work at the Cunene Hackett Art Gallery in August of 2017. This past June, she retired from work, all right, as a special education teacher for Ulster County BOCES, where she edited the school's literary magazine and passionately supported student writing. Recently, she had a poem accepted by Willisaw Journal and a poem displayed in Artsman Hudson's Poets Respond to Art Show. She has 2 grown children and lives with her husband and her cat right here in the Hudson Valley. Penny Hyde Levine. Come on up, Penny.
Thank you. It is great being retired. And one of the things that I've been doing is putting together a manuscript. So I'm going to read from that. One of the difficult things about a manuscript has been kind of meeting myself at other times in the writing. But I also sort of meet my children at different ages through the writing. So I'm kind of sort of read some things from the beginning of the manuscript, which most of it was written quite a while ago. This is Band-Aid. At 3, I believed in Band-Aids. My friend's father sat me on the washing machine and smoothed a small, round Band-Aid on the unbroken skin of my knee, an assurance against panic. I stopped crying. He carried me in his arms back to my house with my hurt leg we did not yet know was broken. Childhood fairy tales. You weren't traded for a salad or locked in a tower, although it might have saved you. You don't have a ladder of hair. Your brother was a wolf. You can't turn into a swan or a bear. Ants won't help sort lentils from ashes. No one sees the beautiful mother's evil. The birds who brought ballroom dresses were shot. The prince stays home. The corset laces and the comb fool you. Where are the 7 dwarfs? The wolf evades the woodcutter. Gretel's key can't unlock your cage. You bite the poison apple. It's another childhood one. Summer 1970. At 9, She looks straight at the camera, holds out her arm for the crow who perches on her finger, looks at her with a shiny eye, head cocked. She leans a little forward, smiling. Her posture is easy, confident. She is tanned. Her brown dress dangles a hem, and one shoe is untied. The oldest sits nearby, hunches forward to tie his sneaker. He looks up at the crow which she holds, standing above him. He also smiles. It wasn't her crow. Her second brother, absent from this picture, climbed 20 feet to steal him out of his nest, fed him with an eyedropper, slept with him. In all the boxes of photographs, there is none of him with the crow. Who took the picture? Who, of all the grown-ups, would she have smiled at like that? Her face perfectly open. This voice. I have to tell you, I have this power to describe what I hear and see and touch. It walks across fields through the kitchen and sits insistent before you. And this one was about sort of remembering carrying my daughter. It's called Shooting Star. I knew her first in that sudden white streak. I knew she turned in the dark of me. I knew I would fall, was even now falling. Her father leaving, I knew, leaving. She hung there silent, built cells into tissues, into organs. Her tiny heart beat fast as I fell. She grew, her heels bulged at the top of my drummed belly. She hiccuped when I ate. Through my body, she tunneled out. She arrived. Her blue gaze, delicate fingers, transparent skin, her mouth eager to latch on and not let go. This one also is about my daughter, Hidden Carrie. Daylight savings ends. The weather turns dark and rains for days. Driving home, the road uncoils black and oily. I turn on the radio in the hopes that my 5-year-old daughter will stop yelling, singing, grating on my nerves. At dinner with her father, she was antsy, loud, unfocused, irritable, then teary. He had taken her to see her grandmother at the nursing home. She announced that he cried after their visit. I am distracted. I need to mull over what happened at school that day. The whole building felt on edge, had felt on edge for days. I was in a conference with one student who was processing a classroom incident and who just then had it together only marginally when another student came to sit near us. At a delicate place in our conversation, I asked him if he please wouldn't mind moving. He stood up and lifted and overturned an enormous conference table, which landed partly against the back of the chair and into the elbow of the social worker who was sitting next to me. Leaving, He yelled, fumed, cursed. It took all three of us to turn the table upright when he was gone. It was too much to ask him. I had not known where he was inside himself, sitting there so near us. Finally, at home, Nina settled in bed. I sit on the couch with a blanket. Her father calls, tells me about their visit, how his mother was wailing with pain, kept saying she was afraid she was going crazy, kept calling for her mama and papa. He says that through all his mother's yells of pain, Nina kept smiling, kept trying to read her grandmother the children's book she had brought for her, trying so hard herself to keep it together. Only then do I understand her irritability. I do not think to ask how he is. In 4 days, on Halloween, he will call me at work and tell me his mother died. Unbroken lines for Ben. After they replaced all the lost blood from your veins and you lived, I thought of the house of pain I still carry for you through 30 years of separation. What will I do with it when you die? It cannot be buried or burned. That pain is in our daughter's broken body, her back run over by an SUV, her head injured overturning her car, like your sister, the aunt she never knew, but resembles in all the pictures. Your sister that raised you, brilliant and wild, she hitchhiked across the country at 17, jumped out of a pickup truck to escape the boys who drove, hit her head, and died. Your pain is not all yours. You inherited from your mother, who from her hiding place watched her father and aunts murdered in a pogrom, escaped Soviet Russia under machine gun fire. All of Germany was dark and filled with ghosts when we gathered the certificates of your cousins in Frankfurt, all dead from heart attacks in Auschwitz. Always you have had to escape, leaving me to carry our love and failure. What will I do with it? Anvil hard, immutable. And this one is about my son, learning daffodils. My son and I watch a bee work its body around, underneath, and inside the tiny clusters of violet petals that seem to cup the bee, provide a small room. The bee is absorbed and focused. Its wiry legs work quickly, surely, in and out of the irregular crevices of the petals. My son says, "It's a bug." "It's a bee," I say, agreeing. He is looking with absorption and without fear. I think about how 4 days ago he screamed and burst into tears when he saw a moth fluttering by the curtain, perhaps because the moth was inside, where it surprised him. He does not know about bee stings. I tell him the bee is taking little sips of the flower's nectar. "Oh yeah," he says, in the process of climbing up and placing himself confidently in my lap. We are sitting on the stone stoop. The air is soft and sweet. I see the papery leaves of the Japanese maple just beginning to unfurl, and the delicate tinting of the woods beyond. The grass is jungle green, and the daffodils stand erect. The daffodils! Look at a daffodils, my son exclaims, each time we leave the house. And let's see, I think I will read one more. Go back to my daughter. Sometimes when I worry, I remember. I hold Nina and walk her in the dark across the bare wood floor of her small room. Moonlight comes through the window in a slant square that dips down onto the floor. Her body fits snugly across my chest, her head at my shoulder. I am singing, and I can feel her body listening. Occasionally, I twist my head to check her. Her eyes are wide, even in her stillness. She watches the furniture shift as we move and turn. A car hisses past, and its lights slide across the wall. When her body goes slack and surrenders completely into mine, I know she's asleep. I wait, still walking until she sleeps soundly. Slowly, I lift the bundle of her body across my belly, keep walking, waiting for her to sink back deeper into sleep, her weight heavy in my arms. Then I lay her on her crib sheet and press my upturned hand deeply into the mattress to slide it from under her, walk silently to the door, and close it without a sound. Thank you.
Penelope, Hyde, and Levine. Oh, come in another hand. It takes a lot of courage to come on up here, whether it's an open mic or it's a featured reader, especially for the first time, for whatever the case might be. So thank you, Penny. Thank you very much. Before I introduce our next featured reader, I just want to remind you that there will not be a First Friday in July CAPS event because we always take the weekend off in July. We will be back here on July 8th with Dale Wise Koffler, Allison Koffler, and a poet to be named later. They'll be coming eventually. And then we will, and on June 17th, coming back to this month, next Thursday, she just won the LA Poetry Book Prize. Deborah DiNicola from Florida will be our featured reader on Thursday the 17th. It's a Zoom event. Register at www.callingallpoets.net. Our next featured reader is only a stranger to me because I don't have the right glasses on. Judith Kerman has published 8 books and chapbooks of poetry, most recently Aleph, Broken, Poems from My Diaspora by Broadstone Books 2016, and Postcards from America, Post-Traumatic Press 2015. She has also published 3 books of translations of Spanish poetry and fiction, Between Two Silences and A Woman in Her Garden, selected poems of Dulce Maria Lobanez. Which she won the Cervantes Prize. Oh, no, she was the Cuban Cervantes Prize laureate 1992, White Pine Press in 2002. I'll get it right. And Praises and Offenses, 3 women poets from the Dominican Republic, BOA Editions, Lauman Selections, 2009. She was a Fulbright Senior Scholar to the Dominican Republic in 2002, translating the poetry and fiction of contemporary Dominican women. She has won the Abby M. Crops Poetry Prize. She received honorable mention, Great Lakes Colleges Association New Writers Award. A stranger to no one here in the Hudson Valley, Judith Kerman.
need that stool.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Okay. Actually, I have a new book, but I will read some from Olive Broken before I read from the new book, which is called Definitions. And like a lot of things that I do, there's always an overlap between one book and the book before or the book after. So there are things in Olive Broken that are now in Definitions. There were things in Olive Broken that were from the Postcards from America. And I'm working on a new book called GIMP, and there are poems from Definitions in there. I want to start with just a few things from Olive Broken. The subtitle is Poems from My Diaspora, and I used to think of it as my Jewish book, and then friends of mine said, well, but there's people in diaspora all over the place, and from all kinds of backgrounds. When I was in Africa, in West Africa, people were talking about the African diaspora, which of course is all around us. And there was an Irish friend of mine, Irish American, about to go back to Ireland for a visit, who talked about his diaspora. So we have a lot of commonalities. And one of the poems that is in both books is called Diaspora. And it is a definition poem, and I've discovered after many years of thinking that I didn't do formal poetry, that I do. I just don't particularly like standard rhyming. But I'm going to read you one of these definition poems, Diaspora, give you a feel for what this particular form is, and I'll also share a couple of other forms that I've played with, including the only sonnet I've ever written. But this is Diaspora. It is in 9 sections. And it is a noun, and in the book Definitions, it also has phonetic spelling and syllabization, because the conceit of that book is it's kind of like an alphabet. Diaspora. A woman with a kerchief over her hair sits on a suitcase somewhere, going somewhere else. 2, distance. The idea of homecoming. Were we taken, or did we go? 3, the smells of cooking hover in the stairwells, the roof leaks. 4, suburbia. 5, in each generation, scattered like dandelion fluff, the tiny parachute that takes the seed to a place where it might root. The dandelion has a deep taproot. It does not want to move again. 6, when we visit the old country, we carry phrase books and maps of the sacred places. 7, in the book Nomadic Furniture, everything folds up or is disposable. Armchairs made of corrugated cardboard, air mattresses. 8, mitzvah mobiles, backpacks, valises, tents, the movable sanctuary, the ark with its carrying poles. 9, don't buy too many books. I often read that poem last. Because people always get that joke. This is actually the ghazal that won the Abbey Copse, which is in this book. And a ghazal, it's a form from Persian, and I think some of the other Middle Eastern countries also have it. But this is not a purely formally correct ghazal. Evidently, they're supposed to be 10-syllable lines, which I didn't realize. And in many cases, every line ends in the same word, but they're couplets, 2-line stanzas, which are kind of like a collage. They're not really directly, obviously connected to each other. And what I did with this was to rhyme on the sound O or O's. So every stanza ends with an O or O's word, and the first 2 lines also have that. And you're also supposed to include your name in the last stanza. Tree frog ghazal. for our season just passed. In May at dusk, white voices solo in the swamp, thimble-sized frog sopranos. On the first warm day, we take off our shoes. Warm mud lushes up between our toes. The cat in my arms chirps his purr, kneads, pushes at my face with his leather nose. Spring peepers chorus in the night, sleigh bells across moonlit snow. We stroll past the factory. Light streams out, the din of machinery tended by bleary men. Hot iron glows. On the picket line, the men shouting at young women wear lapel pins with 5 tiny toes. How ignorant we are. I read, you study, the world goes on beyond what anyone knows. Crickets, caroling twists of wire, skitter under dry leaves near the green tomatoes. Frog larvae, swimming in rainwater in the crotches of trees, grow legs, then feet, then toes. Judy, you say, come to bed. We hold each other. The spinning earth slows. Thank you. I have this odd habit of setting my poems to music. I've done 3. And this is one of the ones from Aleph Broken. And it is what is called in the Jewish tradition a midrash, because it imagines something that happens in between the stories that are in the Bible. And in this case, it's right after Genesis. And the poem is called Star-Nosed Mole. And if you live in this region, you may have seen one or seen a photograph of one. They're very strange-looking animals, and they are real. And this is Star-Nosed Mole as an allegory, I guess. Afterward, God imagined a mole, snatch of dark fur, pale polyp flower of a nose, snuffling through the dirt. Imagined her passing through like the needle of a blind tailor turning hems by touch. Imagine the shovel claws scraping toward the knot of black roots, the ears deep in the skull, listening for small movements, the eyes no more than stitches in a shroud. Even now, all these years later, the light of her star gleams down the long tunnels. I want to read one more from this book. This is a very strange poem. I was in Mexico learning Spanish, and down the road from the school that I was attending, there was a bookstore with a cafe, and on the wall of the cafe I saw Taller de Poesía, poetry workshop. So of course I had to go. And in fact, that's how I found the work of Dulce Maria Loinas, which I started translating that week, which was really the first week I could begin to read Spanish. And a little of the way that felt is in this poem. So people were very lovely to me, and they were doing very interesting work, including talking about Dulce Maria Loinas' poems as an example of how to do things. And I found that I was getting some of it. And I bought a book, and I could, with a dictionary and a verb book, of course, read some of her poems and started translating her. Before I had any right to be translating, you understand. So they said, why don't you come back and bring a poem? And I said, hopefully in English? And they said, oh no, in Spanish. So this is my first Spanish poem, and so far really my only Spanish poem that was written in Spanish, but with meditations about it in English, and also the translation of the Spanish is included in the English. So you'll hear the sound of the Spanish, but also you'll understand what it all means. The title of the poem is Canto Extraño, And I love the word extrañar because it means to be far away and also to yearn and to be a stranger or a foreigner. So it's really a wonderful, rich combination of words. Canto extraño. ¿Cómo ir? ¿Cómo hablar con esta voz extranjera? ¿Cómo cantar sobre el ruido de las calles? How to move forward, to speak in this strange voice, to sing above the noise of the streets. Cuando mis padres vinieron a nuestras calles, mi lengua era extraña a sus oídos. Me dan mi lengua con dolor, no tiene raíces. Olvidan sus lenguas de niñas. When my parents came to our streets, they did not speak my language. They forgot the languages of childhood. Cómo andar en las calles de piedras, con la gente, empresa y amor, con los niños hermosos jugando bajo las mesas del mercado, con sus ojos negros. Y me siento extranjera. Mi canción me parece la voz extraña de forastera. Walking in the stone streets among the people, commerce and love, the beautiful children playing under the tables of the market, their dark eyes. I feel myself a foreigner. It sings to me through the fog of my incomprehension. Reading it even a little feels like a miracle. The voice of my first Spanish poem, the voice of a stranger, wanting to be invisible, a native, wanting it also in the US, far from this other America, so that I said to a friend that I pass. The Spanish burned the Aztec codices. Ojalá, say the Mexicans, Allah willing, a fragment of Moorish potsherd. In their faces, 500 years, in mine, only 2 generations, burned tongues I never learned, the Yiddish of immigrant grandparents, the Hebrew of the prayer book, a barred iron gate, usable only for things I didn't want to say. They gave me my tongue with pain, the silence if I forget thee, O Jerusalem. Aquí no se puede olvidar, la voz halla su raíz en las piedras. Here you cannot forget, the voice finds its roots in the stones. And that was kind of important to my learning something of what my own heritage meant to me, which is what that book is about. So here's definitions, and I'll just read some of these, and kind of in alphabetical order, because that's fun. The structure of the book, which is very strange, it's a palindrome. It goes from A to Z, and then Z back to A, with at least one word for each letter in each half. Some letters have more than one word. It was kind of random, and I didn't worry about it. But the idea of being able to go A to Z and Z to A and still be alphabetical gave me the freedom to make the book have a shape, because one of the hard things, as Penny certainly has been learning, is figuring out what order things should go in. And I didn't want it to just be straight alphabetical. That would have really been kind of constrained and boring. So going from A to Z and then Z to A, but alphabetical within that, I could decide what went in the first half and what went in the second half. And that gave me a little of that sense of what book structures are. So this is the second poem in the book. It's called Blues, and it's in 8 sections. It's an adjective or a noun. 1, shards of sky fallen from some nest. 2, early Picasso. 3, Gainsborough's beautiful boy, satin and lace. 4, indigo, a dyestuff grown by slaves sweating in the sun. 5, I remember new denims, too stiff to wear before washing. Now, blue jeans are a luxury item. The more tattered, the better. 6, truck driver language. 7, an old man, blue-black, his voice a carpenter's rasp. His calloused fingers talk to steel strings. He knows all about grief, betrayal. Come back, sweet mama, come back. 8, Mondays. So you see how this form works. I really love this form. This is one that's going to be in the next book, which is called GIMP, and in fact, the word GIMP is in this poem. It's handicap, which is a noun or a verb. 1, from hand in cap, an English betting game, too complicated to explain here. 2, later, a competitive burden such as weight added to a champion racehorse to give the less talented a fighting chance. 3, the number of strokes over par for the course considered appropriate for a duffer. At the tee, I consider mine very high and not likely to get any lower. I address the ball and swing. I whiff, hook, or slice. 4, in folk etymology, a crippled soldier on a street corner begging alms with his cap in hand. 5, I'm now rewarded with a special tag for reserved parking spots. The new logo looks like everyone is a Paralympics athlete. 6, some people don't like the term, or disabled either. I just call myself GIMP. Lines. This is a noun. 1, bed sheets in the wind on a sunny day. 2, poets worry about where to break them. 3, prompters give you yours when you forget. 4, Loretta Young's face was a porcelain mask. We admired her on TV. My mother fussed at me even then about the lines on my forehead. 5, the old lady next door had fuzzy cheeks and creases like the ones I have now crossing her lips. Her lipstick crept up into the lines. Did she get them from whistling? 6, the only way to avoid lines is never to use your face for anything. Old. It's an adjective. 1, creased, wrinkled, and stained. A book of no particular interest except for its leather binding, marbled end papers. 2, mellowed, cheese or wine, dark colored and fragrant. 3, creaky in the joints. When you go up the stairs, the wood groans. You also hear your knees. 4, superannuated, obsolete. 5, nostalgic. 6, wise but foolish, foolish but wise. Once they thought old people were wise, then they thought that we were senile. Now they thought senility was confusion or medication. Now we call it Alzheimer's if we forget a word. 7, vintage. A lace negligee from the 1920s, a desk made of real wood whose scars are from use, anything that has gone out of fashion and is coming back in. 8, never say elderly, at least not around me. Trade. 1, exchange, commerce, swap meet. 2, in publishing a real book, not a chapbook or non-standard binding. 3, a sign in a shop window, meaning wholesale only. 4, has been done with wives, husbands, children. 5, in Amsterdam there lived a maid, mark well what I do say, in Amsterdam there lived a maid, and she was mistress of her trade. I'll no more go a-roving with thee, fair maid. I think I ought to do, what, like 2 more? This is Vector. We're still in the first half, you understand, but this is Vector. And it's, I guess, my COVID-19 poem. 1, direction, like the flight path of an arrow or poison dart, a mathematical abstraction. 2, Computers were invented to chart the trajectory of artillery. Only later were they used to track money. In computer graphics, vectors calculate a shape. Raster graphics have a space in memory for every pixel, like the retinas of our eyes. 3, the threat is invisible. Not mice and rats, but they're fleas, lice, tick nymphs the size of poppy seeds, doorknobs, and elevator buttons. 4, half the carriers have no symptoms, like Typhoid Mary defiantly cooking for strangers. They go out in the street, unmasked, insouciant, crowds at the beach in their bikinis, young men elbow to elbow at the bars. 5, the threat is like carbon monoxide, when the air in the house feels fresh, transparent, but the furnace guy says, "You could have woke up dead." He did. That's what he said. Well, going backward a little bit, this is ream. 1, 500 blank sheets of paper. There are no used reams. A used ream is a manuscript. 2, first used in the 14th century, derived from separating contrasting words for to bundle and to enlarge an opening. 3, using a tool to clean out a pipe or other hollow object. 4, when your boss rips you a new one. And this is legs, which is also going to be in the GIMP book. Legs. 1, nickname for a chorus girl. 2, on Broadway, lasting long enough to make money for the investors. 3, famous gangster. 4, a table relies on them, ball and claw, gate leg, with or without casters. 5, where the most complex joints and longest bones are. 6, what propels most athletes. 7, visible means of support. 8, part of a relay race. I'm out. 9, endurance. 10, a wheelchair is a poor substitute. Thank you. All right.
Judith Kerman, Penelope Levine, Tom Romeo. Thank you, everybody. I know we always say thank you to the poets and to the folks out there watching. One of the people that does not, the only person that doesn't get thanked around here is David Schell, the man behind Green Kill Gallery. How about a hand for him, everybody out there and in here? He's made this place for us to use and for us to play in, so please come on by. We will see you July 8th right here with Dale and Allison and a poet to be named later. If you can join us for June 17th with Deborah DiNicola, please do register at www.callingallpoets.net. Thank you, everybody. Take care of yourselves.